Hey everyone, welcome back to another reading for silent reading. Just a reminder, the rest of the chapters will be on my Patreon. You can head over there. I will have it linked in my bio, in my channel page, and also in the comments. So we're reading up to chapter 10 today. And there's only 25 chapters in this book, so it's going to be fairly easy to divide. There is also a Chinese drama adaptation on this, which looks really good, and I have plans to check it out after we get at least, let's finish the first volume. Maybe we'll do a watch party on my Patreon. Okay, chapter 6, Deputy Sergeant Tao. Tao Ran turned around to see someone sprinting wildly towards him. It was the district borough's little four eyes, Xiao Haiyang, the one with the rapid-fire mouth. It seemed Xiao Haiyang hadn't had time to replace his broken glasses that sat lopsided on his face, falling below his cheekbone as he skidded to a stop in front of Tao Ran. Xiao Haiyang's features had a stiffness reminiscent of a facelift, and his expression was strangely severe, yet he was gasping for breath, panting so violently that Tao Ran felt a sympathetic choking sensation in his own chest. He wiped his sweaty palms in his trousers, then adjusted his glasses, which clung on for dear life in the end of his nose. Finally, taking out his phone from his pockets so that he could read his notes, he began, "Deputy Sergeant Tao, I have a report for you." Tao Ran waited patiently for Xiao Haiyang's breathing to steady. "Don't panic, take your time. You see, during yesterday's door-to-door inquiries on the west side, I noticed that the living situation in the building is pretty chaotic. The turnover rates for tenants is high in general and tends to be seasonal. Tenants change jobs to move so frequently that it's less like an apartment complex, more of like a flea bag extended stay motel. The people living there aren't very close to each other, except for the ones who come from the same area and watch each other's backs. For all of their efforts yesterday, we didn't gather much useful information." Tao Ran nodded, encouraging him subtly. "But one of He Zhongyi's housemaid did come from the same province as him. His name is..." Xiao Haiyang checked his notes. "Zhao Yulong. He and the deceased were very close, and we were told that he had helped He Zhongyi get his delivery job. But Ma Xiaowei and Zhao Yulong had gone home for the past few days." Tao Ran raised his eyebrows. This Zhao Yulong was precisely the person he was looking for. "Last night, I found a person in charge of stock delivery for that cafe chain and got Zhao Yulong's contact details." Xiao Haiyang continued. "After I called Zhao Yulong and told him what happened, he promised to take the last long-distance bus back to Yancheng at the same night. I meant to meet him today." Tao Ran looked at Xiao Haiyang contemplatively. "I thought the district borough was focusing its investigations on Ma Xiaowei." Xiao Haiyang's face tightened even further. He fiddled with the hem of his button-down, perhaps unconsciously. "Well, something feels off about that mysterious person who gave He Zhongyi the phone. There are too many unanswered questions for us to be certain that Ma Xiaowei was the perpetrator. I said that to our sergeant as well, but he told me to stop digging for no reason and not to think I'm always right." At that time, Tao Ran's face darkened, his kindly smile disappearing. "What time are you meeting Zhao Yulong?" "Oh," Xiao Haiyang checked his watch. "It's in an hour, if his bus is on time." "I'll go with you," Tao Ran said decisively. "Come on." While junior officers pounded the streets under the hot sun, Lord Fei reclined against his soft leather of his revolving office chair, his temple propped against his fingers. His laptop on his desk displayed a full encapsulation of He Zhongyi's brief, unremarkable life. After a pause, Feidu found a number in his contact list and dialed it. "Hey, Changxiang, it's me." Feidu listened to the reply over the phone, then bowed his head with a laugh. "Yeah, I'm a bit embarrassed to admit, but there's something I really need your help with." Less than half an hour later, Feidu had successfully acquired what he sought. footage for the security cameras near Chengguang Mansion from the night the mansion opened. It was lunch hour. Fei Du heated a bottle of sweetened milk in the kitchen's microwave, complimented the secretary's figure in passing, then locked himself up in the office and put on his headphones. Through them, he looped the same song he played on repeat in his car. Then he pulled out the sheet of A4 paper. Using an abstract style of drawing that only he understood, he sketched a simple map, then twirled the fountain pen and thought for a moment. He drew a few light circles, then wrote 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Another pause followed. Then he changed 8 p.m. to 8:30. Fei Du drew a few files from the large collection of security footage and compiled them. Then he chose the sections of the footage timestamped 8:30 to 9:30 and fast-forwarded through them. Scenes from multiple different cameras flickered on screen. Fei Du leaned back lazily in his chair, every ounce of focus in him seemingly to concentrate in his eyes. Lo Wenzhou strolled past the intersection of Huashi, a briefcase under his arm and his flashy sunglasses set firmly on his face. Now and then, he raised his arms to hail a passing taxi, but none of them were vacant. Seeing that the drivers of the unlicensed cabs, a local specialty in Huashi, called out to him in unison from their parking spots on the side of the street, "Hey man, need a ride? Where are you headed? It's cheap, faster than a taxi." Lo Wenzhou inspected the platoon fastidiously, at last pausing in the front of a young man with a flat top. The young man was extremely shrewd. He opened the door for Lo Wenzhou immediately. "Hop in, sir. Where are you headed?" Lo Wenzhou didn't say a word. He bent down and got in. The driver switched the AC on, pulled the car out of the line. He was very young, no older than 20. Compared to his comrades with their grease-slick style of wooing customers, he seemed inexperienced and cautious. Glancing at Lo Wenzhou in the rear viewer, he politely reminded his customers, "You haven't said where you're going, sir." "Just keep driving." Lo Wenzhou took his shades off, and his piercing gaze met the driver in the mirror. The driver froze, his expression going nervous. Unhurriedly, Lo Wenzhou opened the briefcase and pulled out a photocopied document. "I have an anonymous report here." He flipped casually through it. The driver's face immediately fell, and his car nearly grazed the one next to it, which responded with a long, loud honk. "Don't worry, I'm not from your district borough," said Lo Wenzhou. "Keep driving." By that point, Tao Ran and Xiao Haiyang had successfully met up with Zhao Yulang, He Zhengyi's friend who hailed from the same province. The three entered a small noodle shop together. Zhao Yulang was well past middle age, despite his continued difficulties finding a foothold in Yancheng after all his years, struggling to do so. He looked far more dignified than the young man who met with closed doors at every turn. The fatigue of his nearly 20-hour bus journey was plain on Zhao Yulang's face, and he blinked hard with wide bags under his eyes drooping. "I really never expected anything to happen to him. May I smoke, officer?" Nobody was about to stop anyone from smoking in the little noodle shop. It was already chock full of men puffing out gray clouds. Zhao Yulang took out 2 hard drags and rubbed his face. "Zhengyi was an honest kid," he said. "Lots of the others go to billiards room or those game parlors to bet on chess and cards and mahjong. But he wasn't like that. He never went. He worked so hard and made money honestly. Said he wanted to bring it home so his mom could see the doctor. Tell me, why a kid who never stole or gambled or caused any trouble was the one to..." "Ask whatever you like, officers. I'll tell you everything I know." Tao Ran studied Zhao Yulang. He noticed that although the man ate with his chopsticks in his right hand, he held his cigarette with his left. The handle of his teacup also pointed left, among other signifiers of the left-handedness. This was a common phenomenon in early times. Parents forcibly corrected children who ate left-handed, so that their elbows wouldn't battle anyone else's for the table space. Tao Ran took a photo out of his wallet. It showed the shoes of the deceased's feet. "I'd like to ask you, did you lend He Zhengyi these shoes?" Zhao Yulang bent down for a look. His eyes turned a little red and he nodded, looking dazed. Yeah, those are mine. He was wearing those shoes when he died? Yes, said Taran. Do you know why he borrowed them? Zhao Yulong seemed bewildered at first. He pondered it carefully, then said in an uncertain tone, I think he was going somewhere. Fancy, to meet someone called something Guang? The Changguan building manor? Xiao Haiyang sat up abruptly. Changguan Mansion? Right. Zhao Yulong nodded repeatedly. That's the name. Who was he meeting? What for? Zhao Yulong shook his head. I asked, but he wouldn't say. That kid was tight-lipped, but his intentions were always straight and narrow anyways. It didn't seem right to probe when he wanted a new pair of shoes. Mr. Zhao, Xiao Haiyang followed up quickly. He Zhengyi had a new phone, right? Ah, yes, he did. Zhao Yulong confirmed. That white one, you mean? He usually couldn't even bring himself to use it. He stuck to his old one. He'd just take it out from time to time to look at it. There were layers of screen protectors on it. Do you know who gave him that phone? Xiao Haiyang inquired. Zhao Yulong's brows furrowed. What is it? Asked Taoran. Well, at first he said it came from some other friend from our province. I thought it was strange, since he never talked about anyone else he knew around there. He was naive, and I was worried that he'd met someone bad. Think about it. Buying him something that expensive out of the blue like that? Doesn't that sound like someone just trying to butter him up for some other reason? Zhao Yulong tapped the ash from his cigarette. I wouldn't stop asking about him. And finally he told me he'd gotten into a fight with someone while he was making deliveries. They beat him up, but he never fought back. They must have regretted it or something, because they gave him the phone as an apology. Taoran and Xiao Haiyang exchanged a look. Nobody had mentioned this when they were making their rounds, and it was odd. If He Zhengyi had been in a fight and received the phone as an apology, what was there to conceal? If the story was true, then why had He Zhengyi acted so cagey and pretended he'd gotten it from a friend? And He Zhengyi lived with a number of people, but nobody noticed that he'd been beaten up, so the physical aspect of the fight couldn't have been severe. In light of that, why had this person given him such an expensive apology gift? They thought that investigating the deceased's personal connections would easily reveal the truth, but all at once everything has gotten even more tangled. Zhao Yulong wasn't certain of the mysterious phone's exact origin, but he was able to provide a rough time frame for the fight He Zhengyi had mentioned. All Taoran and Xiao Haiyang could do was follow the lead to the delivery company He Zhengyi worked with and search for more clues there. That afternoon, the sky, which had been indefinitely clear blue, had suddenly changed its mood. Dark clouds came from nowhere to lay siege in the brilliant rays of sunlight, and humid wind whistled gloomily. A sudden rainstorm seemed to be on the cusp of erupting. The unlicensed taxi driver dropped Lo Wenzhou off near a subway entrance, but Lo Wenzhou didn't leave immediately. He got out, but then pressed a hand to the car door, looking around. When his gaze flickered across the van by the intersection, it abruptly began to move, driving slowly off as if Lo Wenzhou had caught it red-handed. Lo Wenzhou stopped to half open the car window and said in the driver's seat, "Someone's watching you. Careful. If anything happens, let me know." The driver's forehead beaded with sweat. Despite his vehicle's air conditioning, he quickly nodded. Lo Wenzhou gave him a searching look and then turned to walk to the subway station. Just as he was through security there, his phone rang. "Taoran, what's up?" he asked, tapping his card on the reader and walking to the platform. Suddenly he stopped. "What? Repeat that name." The wind slammed the loose window in Feidu's office shut. Paper scattered across the floor. Feidu's hands, draped across the mouse, finally moved. Feidu was focused on one particular frame of the footage. He zoomed in and rewound the video. The timestamp was approximately 8:50 p.m. The footage was from the camera situated on the very fringes of the area, almost beyond the outskirts of Changguang Mansion. It faced a small stone-paved lane. The thoroughfare was close to the water. So there were plenty of bugs around at the beginning of summer, meaning that people passed this way after dark, and those two did walk quickly. Yet one hesitant figure had been pacing under the streetlight for a long time. The video revealed only the poor, coarse-looking fit of the man's suit and his short, slight figure. He loitered and smoked several cigarettes, one hand gripping on a brown paper bag tightly. Occasionally, he would look in one direction for a few seconds. Afterwards, he seemed to be receiving a call. He spoke on the phone for a moment, then walked quickly out of frame. Fei-Du watched the chunk of footage several times, but he wasn't sure whether the man in the video was the dead man he'd met only once. Picking up his car keys, he closed the laptop and left. 40 minutes later, Fei-Du arrived in Huashu's central business district. With a glance up at the darkening sky, he retrieved an umbrella from the trunk of his car, then walked towards the green space near Changguang Mansion. He knew this place well. His path barely wavered, and soon he found the security camera. The air was so saturated with water vapor that rain seemed on the verge of falling. Fei-Du examined the position of the camera, recalling the direction the man had been looking in. Then he turned. At the end of the little lane, he had made out Changguan Mansion. Next, Fei-Du's gaze fell upon the nearby trash can. Several butts lay on the pebbled ashtray. Few people passed this way, so the can was clean. Nobody at all seemed to use it. The cleaners only attended to it once every 10 days, or maybe even once every 2 weeks. Pulling a silk handkerchief from his pockets, Fei-Du picked the cigarette butts up with great care. Then his phone rang. He wrapped them unhurriedly in the handkerchief before taking out his phone. Seeing the name tag on display, he smiled. "Do you miss me that much, Tauranga? Does every day seem like a lifetime?" But Tauren's voice was serious. "Were you at Changguan Mansion 2 nights ago?" "Yeah." Fei-Du paused. "Why? With someone named Zhang Donglai?" Fei-Du froze. Before he could respond, a thunderclap shook the ground, and torrential rain whooshed down. Chapter 7. Lang Chao marched quickly into the city borough building with a compact umbrella in her hand, leaving a long trail of wet shoe prints behind her. As she climbed the steps, she slipped and almost face-planted, scrambling pathetically for the handrail. She looked up and saw Lo Wenzhou coming down from the director's general floor. He met her eyes, his face unusually somber. Lang Chao reached up to push her wet bangs from her forehead. "What's wrong, boss? You look so serious, it's freaking me out." Tauren and Little Four Eyes from the district borough followed a clue from He Zhongyi's roommate today, and figured out that the night that he might have met up with an unknown person before he died. Lo Wenzhou said in an undertone. Tall and long-legged, he walked rapidly. Lang Chao had to jog to keep up. The person reportedly got into a fight with He Zhongyi for one reason or another while He Zhongyi was at work, then gave him that phone as an apology. When Lang Chao heard his explanation, she could practically feel her brain steam through the damp hair. They gave him a whole phone? Over a fight? I fight with people on the subway every day. Why hasn't that ever happened to me? Uncharacteristically, Lo Wenzhou didn't banter back. Tauren and Little Four Eyes followed He Zhongyi's delivery route and asked questions along the way. They found an eyewitness in the chain cafe. The witness said that a few days ago, He Zhongyi was leaving after his delivery when he got into a physical altercation with someone near the cafe's entrance. The cafe's security camera caught the license plate of the other party's car. As he spoke, they arrived at the interrogation room. On the other side of the one-way mirror, Tauren sat across from a man in his early 20s. The man's hair was bleached and flaxen blonde, and he was outfitted in an array of showy branded clothes. It was clearly that he was short-tempered as he was young, and he seems like he was suppressing his anger with great effort. Lang Chao wouldn't be surprised if steam started spewing from his ears. Yeah, maybe I did beat that loser up, he was saying, gesturing threateningly as he spoke. So what? I beat up lots of people. None of this has anything to do with me. Ask Fei-Du if you don't believe me. He was there that day. Wasn't he? I'm telling you, Officer Tao. If it weren't for how close you two are with Lord Fei, bringing me like this, I would've. Yeah, just a reminder, I'm just gonna like bleep out cuss words, smut, all of that in the first, like anything on YouTube, but going forward to the other parts on Patreon, it will be uncensored. Lang Chao stared at the rowdy young man, bewildered. Is this our second suspect? How come we brought him back to our bureau? The night he died, the deceased said that he was going to Changguang Mansion. The man in there was in the mansion that evening. Lo Wenzhou sighed. His name is Jiang Donglai. He's the son of a reputable local businessman. Lang Chao blinked. Oh, a rich guy's son. So? He's also Director Zhen Zhang's nephew. Lang Chao gaped. Before she could reboot her stalled brain, an officer ran with a message for Lo Wenzhou. Sergeant Lo, he whispered. Mr. Fei is here, and he wants to see Deputy Sergeant Tao. Fei-Du politely thanked the officers for the drink and took a sip, then put it down to one side. The coffee they'd given him was instant and had that weird perfumed oiled smell to it. He took in the city borough's decor, thinking that the person in charge of it had been working tastelessly. The work was rough and shoddy, and there were even paint spots on the table's edge, probably fresh since they still gave off that faint smell. Lo Wenzhou walked in to find Fei-Du closely examining the pattern on the table with a frown, his expression unusually dark. Sergeant Lo would have thought that he was looking at a hidden corpse, except that the space under the table was empty. Fei-Du looked up. He gave Lo Wenzhou a simple nod, seemingly not surprised. Have a seat. Does this kid think that this is his house? Fei-Du stirred the odorous coffee with a plastic stirrer. Where's Taoran? Busy. Lo Wenzhou pulled out a pen and opened his notebook. Not wasting a single word on pleasantries, he demanded, the night of the 20th. That day before yesterday. Were you with Jiang Donglai? Think before you answer. Fei-Du leaned back in his chair and lifted his head slightly, his ankles carelessly propped on his opposite knee. It wasn't exactly an unmannerly way of sitting, but it did get off the impression that the seat couldn't hold him. He looked at Lo Wenzhou with a smile that didn't reach his eyes and asked in response, Am I a suspect, Sergeant Lo? Lo Wenzhou gave him a cold look. Fei-Du spread his hands indifferently. You'd better be nicer to me then. I'm not a suspect. There's no weight behind the criminal investigation summon. If you upset me, I can leave whenever I like. Oh. Lo Wenzhou set his pen down. I need to make you happy before we get into this then? Fine, tell me what to do. Sing you a song? Buy you a bag of candy? Having just been candy-zoned by Officer Tao the night before, Fei-Du choked. The storm outside lashed at the windows as the two men sat wordlessly across each other, their mutual distaste heavy between them. After a while, Lo Wenzhou let out a snort. Probably finding his own behavior childish, he put out a pack of cigarettes, wrapped it lightly against the table's edge, and prepared to light it up. I mind. Fei-Du responded to the unasked questions. I've had a sore throat lately. Lo Wenzhou bared his teeth in a smile. If you were mute, we'd be so close to world peace. Despite his rude words, he put the lighter down and then spun the unlit cigarette between his fingers. Jiang Donglai said he met you at the entrance of Changguan Mansion around 8 o'clock in the evening 2 days ago. He said that you could be his alibi because you didn't leave until midnight. I did arrive before 8 and leave at 10 past 11. Fei-Du replied evenly. And I did speak with him at both times. The host provided pretty abundant entertainment, though, so I wouldn't say that Jiang Donglai was within my sight for all 4 hours, and you wouldn't believe me even if I did. Lo Wenzhou tore unthinkingly at the cigarette casing. Why, weren't you two goofing off together the whole time? Fei-Du leaned forward slightly, propping his elbows on the table. The mild damp scent of his cologne, diluted by the rain, greeted Lo Wenzhou. No, he was busy, and I don't like sharing partners with other men. If you keep asking such dull questions and pretending that you don't know what goes on at these parties, Sergeant Lowe, I'll be forced to take my leave. I didn't realize you were so particular, Lowenjo said in the same professional tone, not so much raising his eyebrow as he delivered the insult. So you're saying that you can't prove that Zhang Donglai didn't kill anyone at Chengguan Mansion that day? I can't, but other people could. If you need me to, I can get everyone he had contact with that night to rush over here in the next 2 hours. A handbag each will be enough for their trouble. Lowenjo stabbed at the table with the tip of his pen. Are you implying you'll buy fake evidence with material wealth? What, you're worried that your elite staff couldn't tell if a few models were lying? Beidou shook his head. No, I'm telling you why Zhang Donglai couldn't have been the killer. He leaned back in his chair again, distancing himself from Lowenjo in his uniquely lazy fashion. If Zhang Donglai wanted to kill someone, it wouldn't be wise for him to murder them himself. But he could have easily had someone else kidnap, illegally detain, and even secret murder his target. The West Side is full of migrants, full of people who could have left any day without saying goodbye. One man disappearing this way, no one would notice. Nobody would care, even if it was reported to the police. As Lowenjo listened to the talk of the lawlessness, his palm itched uncontrollably, yearning to violently thrash this scumbag. He only managed to restrain himself with great effort, and his pen nib stabbed through the paper with a rip, leaving behind an angry gash. Killers are often unwise when committing murders. Oh, when committing a crime of passion, you mean? Beidou paused. What were the signs of blunt force trauma on the deceased beyond the blow that knocked him out? Who's doing the questioning, me or you? Sounds like no, Beidou continued calmly. In a crime of passion, the killer's emotional state is explosive. Their anger peaks suddenly, leading to similarly explosive violent outbursts. In that situation, a victim lying unconscious and defenseless on the ground would wind up having his head broken like a watermelon. But strangled? Beidou smiled, his fingertips under his chin, his elbows propped up on the arms of the chair. Strangulation is long, a drawn-out process. It's a way of savoring the murder. It hints on the intention of torture. Do you think someone totally parched would have restraint to sit down and sip their tea slowly? I wouldn't expect that personally. Lowenjo's face darkened. You think of murder like a tea party. Oh, don't get all up in arms. It's just a metaphor, Beidou shrugged casually. Zhang Donglai wouldn't kill anyone. Even if he did, he wouldn't dump the body. And even if he did dump the body, it wouldn't be in some narrow alleyway in the West Side that he knows nothing about. That's my analysis. And as for my intuition, I'd say Zhang Donglai is a useless coward. He might lose his temper with someone, but the worst he could do is get into a fight with them and curse them in public. He doesn't have the guts for murder. Beidou's last remarks were the only appropriate things the bastard has said since he sat down. Zhang Donglai was the son of Director General Zhang's older brother, and as a child of an elderly father who brought him up in a well-to-do household, he'd been spoiled like a prince, becoming delicate and useless. Lowenjo had met him a few times, and Zhang Donglai definitely didn't seem like the man with guts or mental fortitude for murder. As for the rest, well, only a police investigation could unearth the evidence. There was nothing more to be gained from Beidou. Lowenjo shut his notebook and stood to leave. Hey, Beidou suddenly called out from behind. Lowenjo turned and a small object came flying towards him. He caught it reflexively and found that Beidou had thrown him a thumb drive. When it comes to criminal cases, there are a few elements that draws public attention, said Beidou. 1. An unusually large-scale terrorist attacks. For instance, those get on the news. 2. Exceptionally strange and cruel methods of serial killings. Things that sound like urban legends. Those are novelties after all. 3. The victims from a low-risk group. For instance, students, office workers with regular routines, middle-class people who know their place. Projection onto a victim can cause mass panic. 4. Any connection to a source of increasing social conflict, like the power of the state or social privilege or corruption of the elite, stir up that type of debate. Your case has none of these, but somehow it received an unusual amount of attention from the jump. A low roar of dying thunder rumbled indistinctly from some far-off place, adding a final lingering note to his words. That kind of attention normally doesn't last. People lose interest in no time. But now, Jiang Donglai is getting dragged in. Feidu got to his feet as well. As he passed Lo Wenzhou, he murmured, "Is that a coincidence, or is someone toying with you?" Lo Wenzhou gaze hardened into stone. "Save any thanks, I'm doing this for Tao Ran." Picking up the umbrella, Feidu walked out at a leisurely pace without looking back. "Feidu?" Lo Wenzhou suddenly called after him. "It's next week, isn't it? 7 whole years. It's time for a new start." Feidu ignored him, not turning around. End of chapter 7. Ooh, he kind of gave him an olive branch at the end there, kind of like, let it go, thanks for helping me out. They're not really that bad when they're together, I would expect them to be like, I don't know, more angry or something with each other, but not really, because despite the misunderstanding, they seem like they work really well as a team, so I can't wait to have more scenes with them together. I guess it was because of Tao Ran's reaction and how he's like, "It sucks being in the same room as you guys, like you guys never see eye to eye, but here they are, like kind of working together. They're gonna make a great team and a great power couple for sure." So far the case is pretty interesting, and I want to see like where it's going. Like, are these all going to be interconnected ones, or are they going to be like standalone cases? Okay, so moving on. Chapter 8. Wang Hongliang should have been in his prime, but thanks to half a life spent drinking, he was old before his time. His jowls sagged so freely that they were level with his chin. At a glance, he looked very much like a Shar-Pei conspiring to destroy mankind. What the heck is a Shar-Pei? Hold up, I'm gonna Google this. Okay, so it's a dog breed, and it's the ones where their faces are like bloated and like they have those cheeks that are like sagging chins, the Shar-Pei. Okay, maybe I'll insert a picture if you're listening. Yeah, it's a Chinese breed of dog, and it's really funny because when I heard Shar-Pei, the only thing that like lights up in my brain is like Shar-Pei and Ryan from High School Musical. And I was like, what the heck? But it's not even spelled the same. It's like Sharpei. So I was like, it must be like a Chinese saying, but there was no footnote on it. So, okay, moving on. He leaned forward, studying his arrestee through the window, and exhaled enough smoke to fill the whole burrow with heavenly mist. Ma Xiaowei, on the other hand, looked only too waifish. He was so thin, and his face had a pathetic, childish look. Even alone, he was tense, and his eyes, which were so wide they seemed in danger of departing their sockets, darted all over the place, refusing to linger for too long in any one spot. As Wang Hongliang cocked his head and stared at the kid, he asked the man next to him, "So, you're saying they snuck off and brought the guy to the city borough?" He was addressing Huang Jingliang, the head of the district borough's criminal investigation team. Huang Jingliang's presence was invisible when he handled a case. Whatever orders he gave, he simply went with the flow. Like a megaphone amplifying sounds from the above, he drew all his conclusions directly from his superiors. "That's what Xiao Haiyang said," the champion bootlicker answered, lifting his ashtray to receive Wang Hongliang's cigarette. "Well, who would have thought? I never expected that. It's such a coincidence that it hardly seems real, Wang Hongliang broke into a laugh that obscured his eyes and bared his teeth. "No wonder the fortune teller told me. Despite all the obstacles in my path this year, I meet someone important who turned my misfortunes into blessings. That talisman was worth 30,000 yuan, well spent." Xiao Haiyang messes up more than he succeeds, but I guess he can be useful sometimes. "What do you think we should do next, Director Wang?" Huang Jingliang asked ingratiatingly. Lo Wenzhou moves too quickly. Wang Hongliang ran his fingers through his sparse hairs. If he'd been a little slower, I could have used the fact that the suspect is related to the city borough chief to get them all out of my hair. Before anyone could ask him to elaborate, he began to talk himself, walking in circles. The case is progressing even more smoothly than I expected now. With a suspect, the investigation's focus can move out of the west side. That body was dumped here after all. Those people living nearby are all at fault for all this. They misled us with their statements and pushed the investigation in the wrong direction. The argument they heard had nothing to do with the case. They can investigate all they want, as long as it's not the west side. I don't care if it's the Chengguan mansion or some other location. We'll support the city borough's work to the fullest. What do you think, Xiao Huang? The results they found themselves are much more believable than anything we could have intentionally led them to, wouldn't you say? Very bold, very cunning, Director Wang. Wang Jingliang simpered. When you have the chance, let me know where you got the talisman. It's so effective. No problem. Just tell them I sent you and they'll give you a discount. Wang Hongliang patted Wang Jingliang's shoulder and sighed. You know, when you get to be my age, you realize that there are things you simply have to believe in. Things like promotions and wealth are all up to fate. By the way, didn't you say the family of the deceased will arrive soon? Send them straight to the city borough. As he finished speaking, he glanced at Ma Xiaowei again. Then it added to Huang Jinglan, meaningfully. Look at that kid. At first glance, he seems so ordinary, but he actually has a very auspicious face, full forehead, shapely chin. Wang Jingliang didn't understand, and his face hinted at the confusion. Wang Hongliang chortled. That means he's got a long life ahead of him. While the staff of the Huashu District Borough discussed the art of divination, the atmosphere over the Yangcheng Municipal Borough was heavy and gloomy. Taoran left the interrogation room, leaned against the wall, and let out a long sigh. Rumor had it that the fever in Zhang Donglai's childhood had damaged his brain and caused him to grow up into a complete idiot. Taoran had to cut his slack about 8 times a minute for the conversation to proceed, and Taoran was exceptionally patient. If anyone else had interrogated Zhang Donglai, they would have flipped the tables ages ago. Lo and Zhou was waiting for him at the doorway, absently twirling his thumb drive between his fingers. Well, Zhang Donglai said he might have had too much to drink that day. He saw some young punks bothering his little sister and assumed it was a pervert, so he beat up the other guy on the spot. He doesn't even remember who it is. I showed him a photo of the deceased, and all he said was, "He looks familiar, but I can't be sure." He also says he never gave anyone an apology gift, let alone a phone. I think that part is true. He doesn't seem to think it's wrong to beat people up. Taoran pinched the bridge of his nose, a little tired. By the way, why did Feidu come over? He left already, Lo Wenzhou replied, then thought back to the conversation and glared at Taoran. That little brat's getting worse and worse. You spoiled him. Taoran couldn't respond to that. With a flick of his wrist, Lo Wenzhou tossed the thumb drive to Taoran, who caught it. Go have a look at this. There might be something useful in it. What is it? Taoran asked, bewildered. Don't know, but I suspect that it's a security footage from in and around Chengguan Mansion. Lo Wenzhou glanced at the irate Zhang Donglai on the security camera. I've met his sister. She's pretty normal. Once you've given her a call to see whether she can corroborate his story, I'll go talk to Director Zhen Zhang. This time, on his second visit to the general's office, Lo Wenzhou didn't manage to see the man himself. Instead, a stocky man looked up and nodded warmly. Ah, you're here. The man was around Director General Zhang's age. He sported an old scar on his right brow. It slid across his temple to the skin right above his eyelid. Despite the scar, his face wasn't intimidating. In fact, he had a kindly demeanor. Lo Wenzhou was surprised to see him. Deputy Lu Yuliang. Director General Zhang's deputy had been a seasoned criminal investigator who'd risen through the ranks. Even back when the borough's forensic technology was primitive, he'd been involved in many major cases breakthroughs in the capture of countless extremely dangerous criminals. He was a legend in the Yancheng Municipal Borough. In his presence, even the most audacious scoundrel unconsciously smartened up. "If something's up," Deputy Liu said, "you'll have to tell it to me for now. Lao Zhang is distancing himself from this case, and you guys really shouldn't have brought Zhang Donglai here. Anyone under suspicions should have been taken and interrogated in the district's jurisdiction." What was the point of bringing him here? To protect him for his uncle's sake, or to make this look even more suspicious? Sighing, Deputy Liu pointed at Lo Wenzhou. "You're a good person, Wenzhou, but you get too many ideas. You're too sly for someone so young." This didn't faze Lo Wenzhou. He looked outside and his gaze swept the empty stairwell before he reached back and cautiously closed the door. "Uncle Liu." Deputy Liu grew still. "There's a criminal investigator from the district bureau downstairs, Xiao Haiyang." Lo Wenzhou began to speak as quietly as possible. When he first gave us his report on his case, he said that we couldn't eliminate the possibility that we haven't found the body in the location of the murder itself. At this time, I thought that claim seemed odd, since we usually determine that based on forensic and material evidence. Unless something about the situation is obviously strange, people rarely start discussing that kind of possibility before all the evidence is gathered. Wang Hongliang picked up on that oddness and scolded Xiao Haiyang in front of me. I didn't think too much about it though. I just assumed Xiao Haiyang was out to lunch. "I don't understand what you mean," Deputy Liu said in a low voice. "Well, Director General Zhang wanted me to look into Wang Hongliang," Lo Wenzhou replied, "and I've received a word from an informant that they suspect Wang Hongliang of working with the Huashi drug trafficking syndicate." Deputy Liu frowned. "Huashi helped to lead the fight against drugs." "Yes. And don't you think it's strange that Wang Hongliang's team always manages to find such accurate informants so easily?" Lo Wenzhou asked in a rush. "My informant says they have an officially approved drug trafficking network. If you're not in that group, you get caught as soon as you step into that jurisdiction." "Where's the evidence?" Deputy Liu demanded immediately. "We're gathering it," replied Lo Wenzhou. Back to the murder case yesterday. We took unexpected statements from the residents in the area that they heard arguments near the crime scene at around 9 o'clock in the evening. At that point, Wang Hongliang went right out and arrested a young man suspected of being at the scene at the time. The kid was skinny, he wouldn't meet anybody's eyes, and he was barely coherent. But however long he was grilled, he was adamant that he hadn't seen anyone else at the scene of the crime. Now we have evidence that the body may have been dumped there after all. Now, I've been wondering, if this argument that the neighbors overheard wasn't related to the murder, then how come the young man, the suspect, was so afraid of telling the truth? Why did Officer Xiao Haiyang raise his eyebrows by implying to us that the scene of the initial crime was somewhere else? Is it possible that he knew from the very beginning that no murder had happened there? Deputy Liu couldn't contain himself. He rose and began to pace. "Uncle Liu," said Lo Wenzhou, "there are so many clues here, and they're all convoluted. The details of this case was way too muddy. I suspect the case has something to do with that report I received. Taoren and Xiao Haiyang found Zhang Donglai by utter coincidence, and I hadn't brought him straight here. There's a chance that Wang Hongliang would have used this as an excuse to force the Director General's and her team from interfering. That way, he could have shifted the focus of the investigations. Then he could have arranged for the kid in custody to die from an overdose, disqualifying his statement because he'd made it under the influence. That would shut the door on the whole affair." "Lo Wenzhou, do you know what you're saying?" Yes, Lo Wen-jo said impassively. I'm accusing a colleague of committing a crime. Deputy Liu hesitated. What do you plan to do? For now, designate Zhang Donglai a major suspect. Once Wang Hongliang sees us, apparently shifting the investigation focus away from the west side of Huashu, he'll probably take advantage of the situation and transfer the case to us. The criminal investigation team worked overtime on the security footage Fei Du had provided. By the time Lo Wen-jo arrived home, it was late at night. As soon as he opened the door, he heard a meow, and a short-haired cat peeked out. Oh my god, he has a cat! There's a really cute picture in the book. It's around page 94, 95. Lo Wen-jo stretched out a leg to push him back inside. What are you meowing about? I didn't eat either. He caught a sight of a new parcel in the letterbox at the door. When he opened it, he found a sealed evidence bag full of cigarette butts. Lo Wen-jo stared. He lifted the parcel itself and tipped it over. There was nothing else. Then his phone vibrated. Someone had sent him a photo of a solemn, deserted, stone-paved lane lying silent and narrow between a body of waters and some shrubs. There was a lonely trash can in the center of the image. The text under the photo was neither a descriptive caption nor a sign-off, and it was comprised only of 3 words, by the way. Lo Wen-jo studied the photo thoughtfully for a moment, but the Lord Kitty next to him was tired of waiting. The cat's full name is Lo Yiguo. A middle-aged at 7 years, he had a round face, large eyes, and a sleek, shiny fur. He was perfectly adorable aside from his slightly impatient temperament. Lo Yiguo stretched out his paw and swatted Lo Wen-jo's leg, then walked his butt swaying to the corner of the room where he squatted on the floor peevishly and showed off his empty food bowl to his litter shoveling slave. That is so accurate for the description of cats. They're all like, you peasants. That lumbering idiot only glanced at him, though. He didn't even move. The unthinkable, mistreated Lo Yiguo fumed. He charged and rose up on his hind legs to grab Lo Wen-jo's shin and bit his pant leg, yowling. Lo Wen-jo bent down and lifted him right off the ground by the scruff of his neck. Got a death wish, you brat? Lo Yiguo unleashed an ear-splitting howl. His claws flew through the air as he stuck his tongue out cockily. Lo Wen-jo rolled his eyes. He loosened his grips on Lo Yiguo, and the kitty easily freed himself, flipping gracefully through the air and landed in all fours. Very soon, Lo Yiguo received a sufficient quantity of dry cat food, along with some bonus can of wet food. This once again reinforced that completely satisfied Lo Yiguo's belief in the axiom, spare the rod and spoil the child. You had to bite your litter shoveler to keep him in line. Lo Wen-jo sat down and caressed his cat carelessly for a while. Abruptly, he looked down at Lo Yiguo's fluffy, upright tail and recalled the beast's origin. Taoran had purchased his lordship from the morning market way back when as a present for young Fei Du. Fei Du had seemed to like him a lot at first, but after a few days at home with the cat, he suddenly grew tired of him and refused to point blank to keep him. Taoran's hometown was far away, and as a new officer who couldn't afford his own property, he moved often. That made it difficult to keep a pet, so he gave the cat to Lo Wen-jo to foster. Cats, dogs, and noisy children under the age of 16. Lo Wen-jo hated them all. He despised fostering a cat so much that it drove him crazy, and so he gave Taoran an ultimatum. Find this four-pawed nuisance another home within a month, or Lo Wen-jo would boil him into soup. 7 years passed in a blink of an eye, and no other home was ever found for Lo Yiguo. Lo Wen-jo had devolved from a blustering carnivore into a dutiful, uncomplaining litter shoveler slave. Meanwhile, Lo Yuguo rose in status from the backup meal to the lord of the household. Such was a life of an inconstant world. After contemplating the cat for a moment longer, Lo Wen-chou stood suddenly and grabbed some of his half-eaten bread from the fridge, then left again. The streets weren't as congested as at this hour, and despite his deep desire to always arrive at work on the same time, Sergeant Law now rushed back to the city bureau. As soon as he walked in the office, he found that someone was already there. Rubbing his eyes as he scrubbed through the security footage again and again, Lo Wen-chou's steps paused again as he sighed. I knew you'd still be here. Tao Ran stretched. It's not like I have much to do at home. How come you're back here? It was so depressing to think of you sad and lonely, working overtime this late at night, that I had to come and keep you warm. Lo Wen-chou sauntered over and sat on his desk. Any new discoveries, Mr. Model Worker? Chengguan Mansion security cameras are all indoors. Our tech guy just checked over the footage from 8 o'clock to midnight on the 20th. There were 4 points where Zheng Donglai clearly appeared on the outdoor cameras, and according to the facial recognition software, there were 40 minutes when he was neither inside the club nor within the view of the outdoor cameras. Those 40 minutes are cumulative, though. He moved out of sight repeatedly, but for very short periods of time. There were only 2 occasions when he deliberately tried to avoid the cameras. One was around 10 o'clock when he left with a girl for under 20 minutes. He looked up specifically to check the cameras. He did that again near midnight, but Chengguan Mansion cameras were shut off after then, so we don't know what happened or what time he came back. Lo Wen-chou rubbed his chin. They left for under 20 minutes. Tao Ran nodded earnestly. Yes, but if we find the girl, she can probably vouch for him. Lo Wen-chou shook his head. He was that quick. This left Tao Ran at a loss for words, but before he could recover enough to react, Lo Wen-chou adopted a more proper tone. Does He Zhongyi appear anywhere in the recordings? It doesn't seem like it. This afternoon, our team picked up 20-odd frames that could have He Zhongyi in them, but the cameras never actually caught a face, and some of the frames were very far away. I looked through them, and in my opinion, he's not in any of them. If the killer really did murder He Zhongyi at Chengguan Mansion, do you think they'd be careless enough to get caught on camera? We didn't spot He Zhongyi at any of the entrances either. Maybe he was deliberately avoiding the cameras. Lo Wen-chou stood and started pacing behind Tao Ran. But if there wasn't anything, Fei Du wouldn't have brought this footage over. With that many cameras covering 4 hours, how could he have watched it by all himself? Tao Ran responded. Maybe he just gave it all to us so that we could check it. Lo Wen-chou shook his head. After a moment, a thought came to him. You said they shut off cameras after midnight? Yeah. Only the ones near the parking lot and a few small paths were outside the club kept running. They probably turned off most so that they wouldn't capture those drunks at their worst, then left the rest on the security. Lo Wen-chou set his hands on the back of Tao Ran's chair. The courtyard camera were probably in visible places, so guests could easily avoid them if they wanted to, but they might have set the cameras outside in darker corners as a precaution against break-ins. Pull the footage from the cameras that were on all night. That makes sense, Tao Ran agreed. Unlocking the phone, Lo Wen-chou glanced at the photo he just received. Any cameras facing a cobbled road near to some water? Funnily enough, one is. The camera's display time flashed 8 p.m. sharp. The screen was pitch black. As they watched the sped-up recording, the black shadow in the middle of the screen suddenly flapped away. Out of sight, it was a bird. The 4 corners of the image captured by the cameras were black. Only a small patch of the center was visible. Birds darting in and out frequently obscured that patch. Maybe the camera was hidden in a birdhouse. At around 8:50 p.m., a wobbling figure appeared beneath the camera near the trash can. Tao Ran immediately paused. The figure had probably come to the trash can for a smoke, not noticing that the camera was in the tree. Wait, this guy, he looks a bit like He Zhongyi. Taoran studied the figure more closely, then sighed. If the butts are still there, we could potentially confirm with DNA. Then again, it poured rain this afternoon, so now I guess... What? What are you laughing at? Lo Wenzhou reached into his pocket and retrieved an evidence bag full of cigarette butts. Go get these tested. Taoran was shocked. How did you? Where did you? Shh, keep it quiet. We didn't acquire this evidence through the proper channels, so we can only use it to privately confirm our suspicions. Lo Wenzhou put a finger on his lips, then whispered almost inaudibly, a very annoying young man sent these. Taoran looked even more shocked. Feidu, did you guys call a truce? Lo Wenzhou didn't reply. He placed a hand on the back of Taoran's head and turned it back towards the screen. Any other clues nearby? Oh, right. Hold on. Taoran said, digging out a marked map. This road only leads to two places, Chengguan Mansion at one end and a public space at the other. After this person, potentially He Zhongyi, left, he definitely didn't head towards Chengguan Mansion, so he must have gone the other way. That would have taken him to the main road. There's a bus stop there. Lo Wenzhou smiled. I like public places. You can search them anytime without needing to deal with any of those fussy rich folks. Following the lead, the pair headed straight to the traffic police team situated by the bus stop. It was late at night. Dew would start appearing at any moment. Lo Wenzhou switched off the car's AC and opened the window to let wind in. Whatever we find out tonight, don't tell anyone else. That includes our teammates. Taoran blinked. Why? No reason, said Lo Wenzhou. I didn't expect it to be more than a few days before the district bureau applies for a case transfer, and after that you can focus exclusively on He Zhongyu's case and set everything else aside. We can keep Zhang Donlai as a suspect for a couple more days before we find the true perpetrator. It'll teach him a good lesson. Taoran detected an uncommon strain of solemnity in these words. He couldn't help turning to look at Lo Wenzhou. Lo Wenzhou cocked his eyebrows slightly. What are you peeking at? Am I too good-looking to resist? Whatever you say, you sad bachelor. I guess teasing me is free. You must be bargain hunting, huh? Taoran spread his hands magnanimously. Sorry, tongue-tied. By the way, I haven't seen you go out with anyone in a long time. What happened to the one you were playing pool with? Oh, we broke up. He went abroad to study. Huh? To study Chinese? In Italy. Taoran almost choked on his saliva. How could he be so frivolous? Lo Wenzhou shrugged expressionlessly, and Taoran sighed. Be grateful, at least your family isn't getting on your case. Taoran's words and tone let Lo Wenzhou instantly deduce his troubles. Your family's pushing you to get married, huh? I'm too handsome, so fate is less kind to me, but why can't you find a partner? Taoran thought it over, then gave a clipped but emphatic answer. I'm poor. Lo Wenzhou couldn't help but burst into laughter. What are you laughing at? I can't compare to you. My salary's barely enough to pay my mortgage. I'm poor. That's the objective truth. Taoran ran his fingers through his bird nest-like hair, rather indifferently. But now that I've managed to piece together my down payment, I'm finally entitled to be match-made. I'll be satisfied with that, I think. It's not like I need to marry my dream girl. Lo Wenzhou flashed his high beams at the road sign and saw that they weren't far from their destinations. You have a dream girl? He asked, gazing calmly ahead. Yeah, the girl in the class next door in high school, Taoran said. She looked like Angie Chiu. We haven't been in touch in years. She might be married to someone else now. Even if she isn't, she'd never get married to me. We're almost there. Let me call the guys on duty to let them know. 5 minutes later, Lo Wenzhou parked the car. Taoran was just about to get out when Lo Wenzhou turned to him and said, Let me ask you a very serious question. Taoran stared bewildered. What? Let's just say, hypothetically, that you were a woman. Who would you marry? Me or Feidu? Lao Luo, Taoran replied in sincerity. I haven't seen such a childish, romantic rivalry since I graduated from kindergarten. Hypothetically, Taran paused to think, if I were a woman, I wouldn't have time to spare on you two. He concluded, I'd be busy stressing over how to come out to my mom as a lesbian. You couldn't come out of the closet because all the other women in the world would be dead. Lo and Joe said impatiently, all the other men would be dead too. It'd just be me, Feidu and me. Who would you pick? As Lo and Joe's casual words turned 6 billion people to ash and scattered them in the wind, Taran pursed his lips. You then, he said, finally resigned. Hearing that, Lo and Joe couldn't help it. He smiled, that triumphant smile of a fox in a hen's house. Me? You sure? Of course. You're the only one I could choose. Taran counted on his fingers. Feidu's still 2 months too young to marry legally. Hey, what are you doing? Lo and Joe put his phone away, smirking as if he'd won a great victory. Taran didn't understand what he was so smug about. Thinking back on their conversation, he shuddered, his skin breaking into goosebumps. He shook his head and got out of the car, not seeing that Lo and Joe had recorded their conversation on the sly. He's gonna so taunt Feidu with that, isn't he? That's so freaking funny. I knew the second he said, I have a serious question for you, it would not be that serious. Okay, we have half a paragraph left till the end of this chapter, so let me just read that. Getting security camera footage was easy enough for the city borough's police, so long as that footage wasn't a private location like the Chengguan mansion. However, the bus stop camera failed to confirm what time the man that was suspected was He Zhengyi's had arrived near Chengguan mansion. Still, it did offer the two officers another pleasant surprise. The footage shown that time was around 9 o'clock. The man had walked out of the little lane and straight to the bus stop, where he boarded the bus number 34. In the process, he looked up at the bus stop sign, long enough for Lo and Joe and Taran to confirm that he was indeed He Zhengyi. Okay. End of chapter 9. I'm gonna go for a little snack break because at the time I'm filming, it's like 3 in the afternoon. And then I'll come back to read to you guys the last chapter, chapter 10, and then the rest will be on Patreon. I really love the trio's dynamic. The friendship is solid. Of course, they've been like buddies forever. I love the random cat moment and how soft. We get to see like different sides of him and how he's very like he says things like, that's so annoying, but he kind of is like that. He does that to Taran too, but then he would like tease him, or he would like run back and know that his partner is like going all out on the job, so he's gonna do it too. So it's really nice. They're very hardworking. I hope this case gets solved. I don't even know where it's going, so I have really no predictions for it, but we shall see. Chapter 9. When the therapist's clinic closed for the day, the final client rose to bid her courteous goodbye. Taking out a box of elegantly wrapped chocolates as he did so. Thank you for your efforts, Dr. Bai. I brought these for you to try. I thought you might like this flavor. His therapist was accustomed to this. Her client, Feidu, certainly knew how to endear himself. He gave sweet compliments with abandon and was never late, never lost control of his emotions during a session, and often brought exquisite but not inappropriate pricey little presents with him. Even the clinic's cleaners knew him. Before she had time to thank her client, she saw his phone vibrate twice. Swallowing her words, she smiled and gestured to him for him to go ahead. Feidu gave her an apologetic gesture back. On his phone, he found 2 new messages. The first was extremely short. Thanks. The text of the second said, returning the favor. A sound recording was attached, so Feidu put the phone to his ear. Let's just say, hypothetically, that you were a woman. Who would you marry, me or Feidu? All of the men in the world would be dead too. It'd just be Feidu and me. You then. Me, you sure? Feidu still 2 months too young to marry legally. Feidu was dumbstruck. The counselor was watching Feidu carefully, and for a brief moment she noticed a mix of astonishment and annoyance across the young man's face. It made him look much younger and livelier than usual, catching her off guard. Feidu had come to Dr. Bai by a way of referral. His previous therapist, a specialist in children and adolescents, had been her shudi at school. It was impossible to know how many therapists he'd had before that. Feidu probably barely remembered them all himself. It sounded to Dr. Bai like he'd been seen as a difficult case, a pain to deal with. Of course, her shidi had spoken with her before bringing her this patient. Dr. Bai's first line of inquiry had been about why Feidu needed counseling and what was obstructing the process after all. I don't know what his problem is, her shudi had replied. Feidu is very cooperative. He talks about whatever you want him to. I've tried to discuss how he lacked care and attention as a child, how his mother died unexpectedly, things like that. He never avoided any topics. He always responds very sincerely. There are times when, if you run out of things to say, he'll helpfully hand to you the next topic. Do you know what I mean by Jia? Dr. Bai understood what her shudi was implying. The patient wasn't cooperating. In over a decade of experience, Dr. Bai had come across various methods of avoiding cooperations. Some patients started making things up, even at the questionnaire stage. Some people think that there's nothing wrong with them and that they were only in treatment because their families were forcing them. Some even thought themselves experts and tried to turn things around on their counselors. Psychotherapy was a battle of wits. Counselors weren't all powerful. There were always going to be people who, for whatever reason, couldn't form a trusting relationship with their counselor, leading to an ineffective failed session. Those patients would have been referred out or else give up on treatment altogether. And Feidu was unquestionably unique, even among unique patients. He was one of those who lied on his questionnaires, but because he was savvy and had some knowledge of psychology, his lies were irrefutable. In conversation, he spoke candidly and rarely avoided topics. When a counselor tried to probe, he even described his own unhappiness in clear, logical terms. On the surface, he gave the impression of being perfectly open and frank. Even as a teen, his self-control had been impeccable. When a counselor prodded at him, a highly sensitive topic, he never showed a hint of defensiveness or aggression. His emotional reactions were always positive. The issues were that they were too positive. Not even the strongest, healthiest person could maintain such a calm and logical demeanor when discussing such keen, heartful pain. It was only the great power of AI that required no psychological counseling, just electrical charge. Thus, the sole possibility was that Feidu wasn't willing to share his true emotions. Dr. Fei used countless of methods, but she never managed to form a truly effective channel of communication with Feidu. She was forced to admit to him, "This is the limit of my professional expertise. I may not be able to help you at all, but if you feel like you still need help, I can try to find you a better counselor." To her surprise, Feidu declined. After over a month of ineffective treatment, the man with more money than he knew what to do with decided to double the booking fee. Dr. Bai's final 2 hours every Wednesday. Before leaving, he'd even tell her sweetly, "I feel very comfortable here. You've helped me a lot." If Dr. Bai wasn't well aware of that, she was old enough to be his mother. She might have suspected the young Lothario of trying to seduce her. Sometimes when daily life was too dull to produce anything worth discussing, Feidu borrowed books from Dr. Bai and returned them a week later. Then struck up a conversation about what he'd read. He seemed less like a client and more like a research student she was supervising. Gradually, Dr. Bai observed, though the evidence was minimal, that sometimes these academic chats allowed Feidu to express a tiny bit of what he truly thought. Only a bit, though. And the moment she asked him about it, he would deftly begin to avoid the topic. It was as if he were sealed away in a fortress surrounded by impenetrable walls, looking through the glass of the structure's sole window to quietly snoop on the people down below. It required extreme stealth to convince him to cautiously pry the window open, even a sliver. Taking careful measures of Feidu, Dr. Bai asked, "A friend?" "Just an acquaintance, returning a favor with a prank." Feidu seemed to grind his teeth a little, but then he tucked his phone back into his pocket, quickly adjusting his expression. Well, I'm off, Dr. Bai. I'll be back to bother you again next week. Dr. Bai walked him to the door as always. One hand on the door, Feidu extended his other hand behind himself, gesturing for her to stop. He'd had a sudden thought. Oh, that's right. Next week will probably be my final visit with you, Dr. Bai. I'd better let you know in advance so that you can leave that time slot for someone else. Dr. Bai was stunned. Do you feel that you've resolved your problem? She asked unthinkingly, and that you won't need to come back? Feidu's sultry eyes curved up in a smile. Recently, I've had this feeling like I've been slowly walking away from where I used to be and trying a new way of living. But I really appreciate the help you've given me all these years. Dr. Bai laughed bitterly. I still don't even know where you used to be. It's enough that I know. Feidu smiled at her. Talk to you next time. Okay, there's a chapter break before like the next portion, and it switches over to like what's going on with the case again. But I just wanted to like discuss it a little bit because wow, that is so scary. And I love that we're getting this from him. Like, also in the live action, they make it seem like he's a psychotic, like he's somewhere on that, spectrum because he's so cold and feeling. But like she says, there's a sliver of something, and she's never seen that expression before, which is saying so much because apparently he's like, it's been great all these years, blah blah blah. So he's been here for years, and he's been going to different psychiatrists and therapists, and yeah, so it seems like he's not unaffected. He's just like buried the trauma so deep, and he kind of learned to not open up, and that's the problem. They're like, it's been years, and the fact that he controlled himself this much in front of other people, like he doesn't trust anybody at all, and he just kind of like, he's not mean about it or anything, he's not vicious, but that's even colder, that's even scarier. How can somebody be like not AI? That's what she's saying. How can you be human and not express, like not have a slip up, not have anything? And there are moments, but like he would just shut it down or like make it like, he is very smart and intelligent, and unfortunately he's using that to push people away. And yeah, it's very, very interesting to see that she even notices, like, I've never seen him have this weird expression on his face. Who's that? Like, and she doesn't even know like what his childhood is or anything. It's like, yeah, we talk about it, but we don't really talk about it. So it looks like the only two people that he truly cares for is Tao Ran and probably Lo and Zhou. So I'm very interested to see if we get that flashback. Probably not now, but I mean, they're getting closer. And the little recording, I knew he was going to send it to Feidu. That's kind of hilarious. Lo and Zhou is very like, he's older, but he has like a more childish demeanor, and he knows that he just knows how to get under Feidu's skin, and it seems like it worked because like, yeah, it's a joke, but he looked a bit irked about it. Okay, so yeah, let me finish this chapter. Okay. Yancheng's city-wide license plates restrictions were still in place the next morning. Lo and Zhou looked like a delivery man as he rode his noisy old bicycle with cat hairs coating his pant leg. And in that state, he came face to face with his enemy's luxurious sedan. Fortunately, Sergeant Lo was used to the abject shamelessness, so he kept calm. He rode his bike with the attitude of an astronaut flying a spacecraft, then slammed his foot down and stopped by the side of the road, lifting his chin at Feidu. Is your rich tyrant back to send his love to the traffic police again? I'll tell them to give you a VIP ticket. Getting a ticket for bringing a friend's sister in to assist in investigation? Fei Zhang retorted, sounding relaxed. For a public service, Sergeant Lo, this station certainly seems focused on earning a profit. Lo and Zhou noticed a young man and a young woman behind Feidu. The girl's eyes looked reddened, and on closer inspection, her face was a bit familiar, similar to Zhang Donglai. Turning sideways, Lo and Zhou got off his two-wheeled space shuttle. Zhang Ting, is it? Zhang Donglai had a little sister named Zhang Ting. Lo and Zhou had seen her before, but he didn't know her well. The girls were well behaved, unlike her ruffian brother, who was often detained for illegal racing. Jiang Ting was about to speak, but the man next to her stopped her. Before she could say a word, he stepped forward and handed Lo Wenzhou a card. "Hello, officer. I'm Jiang Donglai's lawyer. I'd like to know the current status of the investigation." Lo Wenzhou frowned, his gaze cutting across the lawyer's face like a blade. When the sergeant was neither speaking nor smiling, his eyes held a cold haughtiness. Instead of taking that proffered business card, Lo Wenzhou glanced at Fei Du, but Fei Du was leaning against the car door, tapping on his phone and distancing himself from the matter. Lo Wenzhou walked past the lawyer, facing Jiang Ting again. "Have you told your family you've hired a lawyer? Does your uncle know?" Jiang Ting froze. Before she could reply, Lo Wenzhou took the lawyer's card and smiled perfunctorily. "You've come so quickly, it hasn't even been 24 hours. Under these circumstances, the sooner a lawyer intercedes, the better, right?" The lawyer responded with a smile just as fake, refusing to be intimidated. "We defend the involved parties' basic rights." Suddenly, a weak voice behind them said, "Morning, Sergeant Lo." Sergeant Lo turned to see Xiao Haiyang standing by the gate, hugging a stack of folders. Taran had brought him back to the city borough the previous day, and this morning he was seemingly self-aware to come himself. "Right on time," Lo Wenzhou smiled at the sight of Xiao Haiyang and pointed backwards, telling the lawyer, "You can talk to the officer in charge then. What's your name? Come over here." Before he had time to react, Lo Wenzhou throwing a random lawyer at him, Xiao Haiyang found himself trapped and thoroughly interrogated. He was completely lost. "Well, what about Deputy Sergeant Tao?" Lo Wenzhou gave him a steady smile. "Taran took the day off to deal with something at home. This case is still officially under your borough's jurisdiction, so it makes the most sense for you to explain, Xiao Xiao." Having gotten rid of Xiao Haiyang and the lawyer, Lo Wenzhou finally turned to Fei Du, his face darkening. "What's all this about?" Fei Du's eyebrows rose. "I don't know. I'm just a driver. Below the legal age of marriage, giving them a ride on the way." Lo Wenzhou rolled his eyes and glanced at Jiang Ting, who was staring blankly into space. He took the phone out and tapped a few times to retrieve a photo of He Zhongyi. "I'll keep this short," he told her. "Seen him before?" When Jiang Ting's unguarded gaze fell onto the picture, she became so alarmed that she instinctively drew back and hid behind Fei Du. Fei Du grabbed Lo Wenzhou's wrist. "Be nicer to a girl, won't you?" "Jiang Ting," Lo Wenzhou said, eyeing her. His tone was a touch severe. "This man was murdered 2 nights ago, and your brother is now a major suspect. This is a homicide case, so every word of your statement will be important. Why are you hiding behind someone who wasn't involved?" Jiang Ting shuddered and gripped Fei Du's sleeve. "It's okay, Ting Ting," Fei Du told her, bending down a little so that he could speak in her ear. "Just be honest. I don't believe your brother could possibly be involved. Neither does Sergeant Lo." Perhaps thanks to Fei Du's reassurances, Jiang Ting paused, then took the phone from Lo Wenzhou's hands. It took her a long time to calm down. Her thumbnail was bitten too quick, but at last she nodded tentatively. "The photo is kind of distorted, but I think I've seen him before. I'm interning at the Economy of Trade Center, and one day I went downstairs to buy milk tea and bumped into some weirdo." She pointed at the photo on Lo Wenzhou's phone. "It was him. He stopped me and asked me whether I knew Feng Yange." Lo Wenzhou's eyes bored into her. As in, his surname was Feng, his full name was Feng Yan or Feng Yange. "I don't know," Jiang Ting said, sounding dazed. He had a bit of an accent. "I couldn't tell what exactly his name was, and I don't know whether the Ge part was part of it or an honorific. It was kind of late that day. He just sprang out at me, saying some weird things with a fawning smile. I thought he looked crazy. Nobody was with me. I was so scared. I just kept saying, 'I don't know him,' and tried to walk away." "When was this?" asked Lo Wenzhou. "A while back, Jiang Ting replied. Some crazy flasher was hanging around our office all the time. A lot of people said they'd seen him. The boss wouldn't let us work overtime because of that. But I had some tasks to finish and stayed longer that day. Not many people were downstairs, and I was nervous to begin with. I wouldn't have asked my brother to pick me up otherwise. Feidu thought of the delivery man he'd seen at the cafe. Confused, he couldn't help asking, "And then, did he keep bothering you?" Jiang Ting nodded. "I saw my brother, so I was going to cross the road to avoid this guy. He followed me for some reason, though. I panicked and yelled and ran. I yelled, 'Who are you?' 'I don't know you.' They heard me and beat him up. They probably thought he was some pervert. Did the man in the photo fight back?" asked Lo Wenzhou. "No." Jiang Ting's gaze fell, as if in pity. He just held his head and hid. "I realized that he was pretty young and I'd probably overreacted, so I stopped my brother." Feidu looked up. "You said they a moment ago. Who else was there?" "My boyfriend drove. My brother had a little bit too much to drink." "Oh," Feidu murmured. Then he adopted a convincing, disappointed expression. "All the nice girls already have boyfriends. Who's the lucky guy?" Lo Wenzhou frowned at the sudden inappropriate detour, but he didn't shut Feidu up. Jiang Ting blushed at Feidu's flirtatious words. "Zhao Haocheng from Rongshun." Jiang Ting said plainly, "You know him too, don't you? Mr. Zhao from the law firm Rongshun?" Feidu swept his gaze past her, meeting Lo Wenzhou's eyes almost carelessly. "No wonder you could get a lawyer so fast." "Did you see this He Changyi again after that?" asked Lo Wenzhou. Jiang Ting shook her head. "Sergeant Lo," she stammered, "there's no way my brother could kill someone." Lo Wenzhou's expression lightened. "If your brother's innocent, we won't do wrong by him," he replied. "Even if we were picking a scapegoat at random, would we pick an old director general's own nephew? Don't worry, if your brother would never kill anyone, he's safe." Those words didn't really soothe her. That scoundrel Zhang Donglai was a real piece of work. She said there was no way, but she wasn't certain. "Go in and have them record your statement," Lo Wenzhou instructed. "I'll ask Lang Xiao to take it. Just tell her the truth. It'll be fine." Before Lo Wenzhou had finished speaking, Feidu walked ahead of Jiang Ting and beckoned her as if coaxing a small child. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I'll be with you." From the way he doted on his friend's sister, completely at her disposal, he could have been her boyfriend. Lo Wenzhou was allergic to this dissolute, womanizing lifestyle of the idle rich. He wanted to sneer, but he restrained himself so as not to upset Jiang Ting. Feidu walked the young woman into the burrow. When she went in to record her statement, he waited outside with a paper cup in hand. Lo Wenzhou wandered over and sat next to him. "You people lawyer up for every little thing. It really throws us off." "I wasn't the one who suggested the lawyer," said Feidu, just as Lo Wenzhou marveled at the unexpected civil, straightforward explanation. The young man followed up by quipping, "If Zhang Donglai really had killed someone, and I wanted to save him, I wouldn't pick a useless lawyer like that. I'd hand another murderer over to the police with an airtight story." Lo Wenzhou noticed that the bastard's tone was always dark, twisted, and unruly when they conversed, yet always healthy and positive when he spoke to Tao Ran. Neither side of Feidu seemed genuine. It was hard to tell when he was being honest and when he was just running his mouth. "You seem to be under the impression that money is all powerful." Lo Wenzhou's expression was cold, but his tone was languid, his attitude hovering between joking and serious. "You have some very dangerous views, comrade. You don't think money is all powerful because you've never had enough of it." Then his expression the same, but his tone changing, Feidu asked, "Where's Tao Ran?" "Your guidance was deeply appreciated, Fei Zhang," said Lo Wenzhou, "but your means were questionable and inadmissible in court. I had to send Tao Ran out to find evidence that we could use. Otherwise, when your lawyers tries to strong-arm us, do we let the guy go or not?" His words were cryptic and vague. If the walls had ears, they couldn't have made heads or tails of the conversation. Feidu knew, however, that Lo Wenzhou was talking about the cigarette butts. He had managed to collect them, but they were considered objects of unknown origin. Even if those had convinced Lo Wenzhou, though, They couldn't convince the court. The police could only use that clue to find others. If I hadn't touched them, you wouldn't have gotten them in time. We couldn't even know whether the guy in the footage was the victim. Vedu shrugged. Someone once told me that everything that happens in this world leaves a trace, but whether those traces are retrievable depends on luck. Think you'll be lucky this time? Lowenjo suddenly stiffened. The probing, teasing, vaguely adversarial look on his face vanished, and for a moment he pressed his lips together. He reached for the cigarettes in his pockets, then remembered Feidu's alleged sore throats and put them back. Silence blanketed the pair. Neither looked at the other. They simply sat there, 3 feet apart like strangers. The doors and windows were locked. There were no signs of a forced entry in any of the rooms. Your house had the most advanced security features available at the time, and none had been touched. Lowenjo began abruptly. His voice was low, but he spoke quietly. The words slipped out smoothly and without hesitation, as if he was reciting something he'd said numerous times before. She put on her makeup, changed her clothes, and then put music on. The scene had a sense of ritual, of ceremony. There was a suicide note on the desk next to her, and experts determined that the handwritings belonged to the deceased. The writer had clear depressive tendencies, consistent with her daily use of antidepressants. She was an adult with no major illness that would have led her to lose control of her body. There were no substances in her bloodstream, insufficient quantities to sedate her, and there were no signs of physical struggle. That was all the evidence we gathered. You were the one who made the report. You saw the scene before we did. Unless you're telling me that you hid some other evidence, it was a suicide, no doubt about it. Vedu didn't speak. His posture looked completely relaxed. His legs crossed, his upper body leaned forward, and one hand casually rested on his knee and the other one no longer held the steaming paper cup. His slender finger tapped a beat on the rim of the cup, almost like the rhythm of a drifting melody that no one else could hear. I told you that everything that happens in this world leaves a trace if it's real. If no such traces support what you believe, then no matter how hard you believe it, it's delusional, a wild goose chase. Vedu, you may have extraordinary intuition, but we can't operate on intuition alone. My intuition tells me every day that I'll win 5 million in the lottery. Lowenjo gazed pause on Feidu, tapping finger, before he continued in a cool, impassive tone. Did you know in other cultures they say that someone suicidal will suddenly start telling their nearest and dearest families that they love them in various ways? You heard her say that too. Feidu's fingers froze in midair. Lowenjo stretched out his arm and took the cup from him, setting it to one side. If you want to discuss that case with me, I stand by my conclusion to this day. But it doesn't matter who was right. She's been dead for 7 years. The casket's closed, and so is the case. Even the evidence had been incinerated. Forgive me for mentioning an old superstition, but if she reincarnated, she'd be in elementary school by now. You can keep dwelling on this. That's just devotion. But there's no point in this kind of stubborn holding on. Feidu stayed in the same pose, as motionless as a statue. At that point, Jiang Ting walked out with her lawyer. Feidu's gaze finally shifted, making him look alive again. I don't accept your conclusion, Officer Lo, he said. Lowenjo, unsurprised by this, simply shrugged. Feidu straightened his lapel and stood to meet Jiang Ting and the lawyer. His face was unsmiling. His eyes were broody. That said, your advice isn't without logic. The statement startled Lowenjo. Yet after saying that, Feidu put his mask of elegance back on, escorting Jiang Ting out without another word. As Feidu opened the car door for Jiang Ting, he saw a car with official police plates pull up at the entrance of the city borough. The driver got out first and said something to the passenger, pointing at the borough. Next, a slight middle-aged woman wobbled out of the car. She gaped up at the national emblem of the building, her face a mixture of fear and confusion. Her fingers pressed hard against the car door. Beneath her floral printed trousers, her reed-like legs trembled. The driver closed the car door and helped the woman towards the Yancheng Municipal Bureau. She clutched this helping hand like a drowning man, clutching at straws, but she only staggered a few more steps before sinking into a couch and breaking into gasping sobs. After a moment, howls began to rip from her throat. Passersby stopped to stare, some even pulling out their phones. Beidu's brows creased slightly. He heard Jianting's lawyer insist to his client. They don't have evidence that could implicate him as a major suspect. Don't worry, Miss Jiang. I'll stay here to keep an eye on things. And when the time comes, there's no way they'll be able to hang to him. As Lang Chao and Lo Wenzhou emerged from the building, Lang Chao spoke quietly to Lo Wenzhou's ear, giving him the rundown on the woman's identity. He Zhengyi's mother is diabetic. She had undergone dialysis for many years, and he was the only breadwinner in the family. The woman's cries echoed through the city borough, singularly piercing, and Lang Chao's heart ached. Her brows furrowed. Is it okay for her to cry like that? She's unwell to boot. Let's hope nothing happens to her. Before Lo Wenzhou could reply, another member of the criminal investigation team jogged over. Boss, this is Huaishe District Bureau. Just sent in a report. Since the perpetrator is suspected to have dumped the body and the scene of the crime is unknown, the District Bureau wants to transfer the May 20th case to us. They claim not to have sufficient jurisdictional power. Boss, Yancheng Morning Press Call is calling. They want to know whether it's true that we caught a suspect. Sergeant Lo, the lawyer Zhang Ting brought in, is questioning the procedural behind Zhang Donglai's arrest. We didn't have enough evidence in the first place. Do we let him go? Sergeant Lo. With one gesture, Lo Wenzhou shut everyone up. Hearing the distant cries of He Zhengyi's mother, he picked up his phone. Go ahead, Taoran. Wenzhou, I have the footage from the Route 34 bus. End of chapter 9. I think I'm going to stop there for this recording just because the next one will be on Patreon, and I kind of like the idea of having it like 10 to 15, and then it kind of splits it up perfectly. So we're going to stop there. But how are you guys feeling about this? I feel like I'm less interested in the case part as it goes on, because I was like, oh, that's it. It's like it's very realistic, right? Like with all of these jurisdictions, of course, like you can't. And there's all of these powerful people on top that's like trying to shrug off responsibility. Meanwhile, the front like line workers, like our main duo, is really in it for just to like find out the truth and stuff. They're really hardworking. I like that we get to see more of them. I'm more here for the characters than the plot at the moment. So, but I obviously will be continuing at least book 1. So I don't know if I will jump into book 2 yet. I don't even have it. So I'm desperately dying to watch the show of this, like the drama, the C drama, but I want to get spoiled and I don't know like where this volume ends. So if you have like an idea of it, let me know like the episodes, like the number of episodes to watch. Like maybe this volume ends at like, I don't know, episode 5 or 6. Like let me know so I can watch it without being worried for spoilers or any of that. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.